MK, thank you. That was a really excellent overview for us to begin. Yuri's going to take us forward and perhaps talk a little bit about the effect of crime on international relations and from a very unique perch that you have. Thank you. It's excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I welcome all of you who came here on this beautiful Sunday morning. It means that the conference is also a major attraction in this nice city of Vienna, and I would like to thank Mr. President for offering me this opportunity to speak at the conference and to address, obviously, drugs and crime as major challenges to security and impediment to development. But first, we need to understand what is the scope, what is the size and shapes of this multifaceted challenge. And I hope I will not bore you, but I would allow me to myself to quote a few figures just to impress you. Annual value of global cocaine market alone is $85 billion every year. Illicit opiates, it means opium, heroin, and morphine put together, $68 billion. Trafficking in human beings, $32 billion. Smuggling of migrants, $6.6 billion. IT theft is only a fraction of cybercrime, $1 billion. Fraudulent medicine, $1.6 billion. Illegally exported timber only to EU markets, $3.5 billion. And of course, here the list does not end. And we have to add to that millions, hundreds of millions of illegally earned money in smuggling of firearms, piracy, or wildlife crime. And of course, billions paid in bribes and laundered in criminal networks. So it means that we're talking here about major threats, first of all, to political and social stability, to the rule of law and good governance and human rights, and also economic development. And when we see all these uprisings and protests fueled by experience of people denied basic things like health care, education, or employment due to corruption, and in some countries, corruption may reach the level of 20% of their GDP, or face the impact of violent crimes. We also know that this can shake the very foundations of societies seem to be stable for decades. We spoke at length in this conference about the Arab Spring or Arab revival, but actually the Arab Spring was a demand for change triggered, among other concerns, by the unacceptable level of corruption. And now, when these political changes took place in North Africa, political changes must be followed by strengthening of the rule of law, police reform and security sector reform, combating corruption, and assisting in the recovery of stolen assets, fighting against human trafficking and illicit migration, as well as terrorism prevention, which is also very relevant for this part of the world. Through our programs in the MENA region, UNODC is working to assist these countries to progress towards democracy and the rule of law. When speaking about these multifaceted threats, we should fully understand that they cannot be viewed in isolation. In Afghanistan and neighboring countries, just an example, the production and trafficking of opium are leading to high addiction rates in these countries, corruption, funding of terrorism and insurgent groups, as well as overall security in the region. Unfortunately, the latest news are not so good, and after the decline last year because of the plant disease, there is a new increase in production of opium in Afghanistan. This year, it reached 500 5,800 metric tons. And the farm gate value of opium production alone, it means what farmers got for the dry opium, represents 10% of Afghanistan's GDP, only farm gate. But if you add to this profits of manufacturing and trafficking of heroin, it is clear that opium is a very, very significant part of Afghan economy and thus undermining prospects for a sustainable development of this country. And that is a very serious thing. We're moving closer and closer to 2014 when the international military presence will be withdrawn from Afghanistan. And for us, for the United Nations, that is an additional responsibility to assist the government of Afghanistan to meet these challenges. Afghanistan also suffers the highest rates of opiate consumption in the world. The prevalence rate in Afghanistan, 2.65%, and as a consequence, HIV/AIDS epidemics. We in UNODC, we take a balanced approach to this issue by seeking to interdict the drugs as they are produced and then travel along the supply routes, but also recognizing that the drug use and drug dependence are health issues. In addressing drug demand, we need to base our activities on the drug control conventions, which form our profound commitment to an individual's health, dignity, justice, and security through the promotion of human rights and the rule of law. And the third example could be transatlantic routes of cocaine, which impact upon security and development in many areas of the world, on both sides of Atlantics. Take Latin America and Central America. These countries are confronted by high rates of drug trafficking-fueled violence. Mexico is an illustration when drug cartels brought this country to the brink of almost a civil war. In Europe, it's a serious health issue. The drug consumption in Europe doubled last decade, and now the European market of cocaine is almost equal to the US market, more than 35 billion. And West Africa, of course, is the most vulnerable, the weakest link in this chain of supply. Countries from West Africa emerging from internal conflicts and civil wars affected very badly. I recently traveled to Guinea-Bissau, which is the poorest country in the world. And to be honest, there is only industry that works in this country, illicit drug trafficking. These countries need our support, need our assistance. And UNODC is developing several regional programs in West Africa, and also very encouraged by positions of some other countries in Central America and Latin America, and we're promoting South-South cooperation that also could be very helpful. It means that no matter how big or powerful a country is, it is not capable to deal with these issues alone. We must accept that we can act only on the basis of the principle of shared responsibility for this transnational issue.
Yuri?
Yes.
I wonder if in that you could put that into context for us. You're in a unique position to observe the two factors we're talking about here. How do you compare the ability of governments to coordinate today with the perhaps increasing ability of the criminals, writ large criminals, to work with each other to avoid or to defy protection and law enforcement? Are we gaining? You know, watching Thierry de Montbrial organize this conference reminds me very much of one of the highest moments in American culture. And by that, I refer to the comic strip, the bande dessinée Peanuts, in which there is an adorable character, a beagle named Snoopy, who is seated atop his doghouse with a typewriter. And in the first panel, you see Snoopy writing out, "It was a dark and stormy night," the beginning of a novel. And in panel 2, Snoopy is writing, "A shot rang out." In panel 3, it begins, "Meanwhile, in Moscow, the Tsar was ailing." Panel 4 is, "A hurricane has just flattened Topeka, Kansas." Panel 5 is, "The pearl divers in Tahiti were in a foul mood." Then Snoopy looks up from his typewriter and with a wolfish grin says, "In chapter 2, I tie all of this together." Now that's exactly what Thierry does with these conferences, in introducing such a variety of divergent characters to his plot and topics. And so we come now to the topic of development and security. In some ways, the most important word in there is "and," because it's important to understand that you can have one but not without the other. I think we've heard over the last 2 days indications that that's certainly the point, really, of the Arab Revolution. That you can have security for a while, but if you don't have development, you won't have security for very long. And of course, it goes the other way. You need an elemental level of security to be able to accomplish development. So that's the topic that we're going to look at here today. Certainly, it seems to me that the global financial crisis has reminded all of us, all citizens everywhere, of their need for a certain level of protection that only national governments and increasingly international organizations can provide. It's difficult to understand exactly how those interact in a period where there is so much frustration over the problems that big government and big business have helped engender throughout the world. But that element of protection is increasingly evident and important. We have 2 speakers to address this